Hey everybody, we're back again for another 2021-2022 NHL season preview, and today we're going to be talking about a pretty interesting team, the Columbus Blue Jackets, who had a pretty tough year last year, did not have the success that they were expecting, and now heading into this season, expectations are really, really low for this team, and a lot of people aren't expecting them to, do a whole lot this year, but they've got an influx of some young players that could make things a little bit more interesting than maybe we're expecting with the Blue Jackets this year. It's going to be an overall really interesting year, I think, for Columbus, and they're going to be a team to keep an eye on, especially with their young guys this year, and see, how they're able to play and what kind of impact they're able to have. But before we get fully into it, I just ask you to please subscribe and hit that thumbs up. It helps out a ton and is greatly appreciated. But let's get started. And before we look forward, we have to look back. And like I said, last season was not a good one for the Blue Jackets. After, making the playoffs in 2020 and beating the Leafs in the qualifying round. And, there was a lot of talk about Columbus maybe, returning with a really solid team last season, but they end up going just 18, 26, and 12 on the season, 48 points. They finished dead last in the Central Division, even behind the Detroit Red Wings. Offense was virtually non-existent at 2.39 goals per game, but that wasn't even the biggest issue because Columbus was never a high-scoring team, even when they were a playoff team and winning. It was all about the defense with Columbus, and that completely collapsed last season. They gave up 3.29 goals against per game, which is absolutely abysmal, especially for a defense-first team like the Blue Jackets. And that really sunk their season last year. Power play was not very good at 15.4%, and their penalty kill was very middle of the road at 79%. So it was not a great season last year in Columbus. And John Tortorella not coming back as the head coach. Brad Larson now the head coach of the Blue Jackets, so they made a change there. And they made some roster moves as well this offseason. Not a ton, but they did make some pretty significant roster moves this offseason as we take a look here. Incoming is the return of Jake Voracek after they made a trade with the Philadelphia Flyers. So Voracek comes back to Columbus after being in Philadelphia for years. They also picked up defenseman Adam Boqvist in the Seth Jones trade with the Chicago Blackhawks. They brought in defenseman Jake Bean in a trade with the Hurricanes, and their free agent move, or biggest free agent move, was signing forward Sean Corrali from the Boston Bruins. On the subtraction side of things, obviously the biggest one is defenseman Seth Jones, who they traded to Chicago and got a haul in return for. A lot of that haul, though, being draft picks and stuff building for the future. Boqvist was pretty much the only big piece right now. Cam Atkinson leaves after spending his entire first part of his career with the Blue Jackets. He goes to Philadelphia in the Voracek trade. Michael Del Zotto left as a free agent, and then depth guys Mikhail Grigorenko, Adam Clendening, and Cole Sherwood leave as well. So, not a ton of moves here for the Blue Jackets, but quite a bit as far as, a couple of big moves with the Jones trade and then the Atkinson for Voracek trade. And also, it was through the draft, so it was a little bit different way of an addition, but you could put forward Cole Sillinger on the addition side of things because it's looking like there's a good chance that he makes the team right away, and he was their first round pick in this past draft, and he has had a phenomenal training camp, and all signs right now point to him being on the opening night roster for the Blue Jackets. So add him in. I forgot to write him down because it was a draft pick and not a free agent or trade move, but Cole Sillinger, add him to this team as well, as it looks like he's going to be a Blue Jacket right out of the gate. Speaking of Blue Jackets right out of the gate and the Blue Jackets roster in general, it is now time to take a look at my projected roster for the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I'm going to come right out and say this right now. This is just my projection for the roster. They have not really made any major cuts from training camp yet. They still have a ton of guys. They haven't really waived that many players. So they still have a ton of guys in training camp in Columbus. And there are a lot of position battles going on right now trying to work out who is going to be part of the opening night roster and who is going to get sent down, who's going to get waived. There's still a lot to be determined here. For the most part, I used their most recent practice lines from this morning as my gauge as far as where guys are at. We do have some locks up front. Obviously, Patrick Laine, Jake Voracek, Boone Jenner, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Gus Nyquist, Jack Roslovic, Alexander Texier, Sean Corrali. Those guys are all absolutely making the team. After that, though, things get up for grabs. And, I have Kevin Stenlin here. Eric Robinson is a maybe. Yegor Chinakov, their 2020 first-round draft pick, he definitely looks like he's going to be making the team this year, as does Cole Sillinger. As I've said, he's a rookie and just drafted, but it looks like Sillinger was, I'll put it this way, Sillinger was skating as their second-line center at practice this morning. So this late into training camp, a week to go until the start of the regular season, if he's skating as your second-line center at this point, he's probably your second-line center come the start of the year. So it looks like Cole Sillinger is likely to make this team. They brought in Gregory Hoffman over from Switzerland, where he played last year, so I don't think they signed him just to waive him, so I would imagine that he's going to make the roster. And then Max Domey I have listed last because he is a big question mark. He had off-season surgery. He originally was not expected to be ready to go for the start of the season, but now he's a little bit ahead of schedule, and it looks like there is a chance he could be available opening night for the Blue Jackets. So if he's not ready for the start of the season, he certainly isn't too far off, and Domey is going to be back in this lineup, I think, sooner rather than later. On the defensive side of things, we've got obviously Zach Warrenski is their number one guy, Vladislav Gavrikov, Adam Boquist coming over, Jake Bean coming in, and then Dean Kukin. And I have Mikko Lehtinen kind of penciled in as that last guy, but I think there's a good chance that changes and he could get either moved down to the seventh defenseman or maybe even waived altogether. I think, at this point is more of a depth guy. Andrew Peeke, I think, makes the roster. All signs right now at least point to him making the opening night roster, but they do have another couple guys. He's fighting for a spot with Lehtinen. Gabriel Carlsson is in that mix as well. So we'll have to see how that all shakes out. In goal, this is where things are actually set, and I'd say the only position where things are actually set in Columbus, and that is obviously Elvis Merzlikins and Joonas Korpisalo are your goaltending tandem for the Blue Jackets this year. As far as depth goes, they've got quite a few options. Like I said, a lot of these guys are in training camp battles. Liam Foodie's played a lot of NHL games. I have him in the depth category right now, but there is a chance he could potentially make this team. Emil Bemstrom's another one. He's got NHL experience now. He does not need waivers, though, to get sent down, which I think makes him more movable if you're the Blue Jackets, because you don't have to waive him and you can just send him up and down. So that, I think, would be easier for them to start him down and then move him up later in the year if they need to. Josh Dunn, he's not going to make the opening night roster, but he certainly has made a bit of a name for himself with the in training camp and in the prospect tournament. He's a guy that doesn't seem too far away from getting NHL games either. And they have some others as well that are in the mix here as far as call-ups go with the forward group. But Sillinger and Chinakov coming into the lineup really kind of limit the ability of some of these other guys to make the opening night roster. On the back end, like I said, Gabriel Carlsson, if he doesn't make the opening night roster, he's certainly going to be the first guy that they'll look to as a call-up. Scott Harrington, another veteran guy that is available. I believe Harrington's already been waived, I believe, but he'll be available for call-up later in the year if they need him. But there's still some positions to be figured out as far as the defense is concerned. And for a third goaltender, JF Berube, veteran guy, looks like he's going to be the third guy. And available if they need a call-up, if anything were to happen to Merzlikins or Korpisalo, because they don't have a lot of experience elsewhere as far as that as it goes in net. I would say Tarasov is 22 years old. They're going to want him playing, and I don't know if they're just going to want to throw him into NHL action without. He just came over from Russia without any North American experience. I think they're going to want Tarasov to do at least a full year down in the AHL. And then think about calling him up after. So I would say Berube would probably be the guy on a call-up basis, but you could see Tarasov. Just think it's probably better for him to get some AHL experience first. But that is my projected roster for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Like I said, this is gonna be an interesting team this year. There's not a lot for expectations. Pretty much everyone is picking Columbus to finish last in the division. They didn't have a really good year last year. They don't have a whole lot offensively as far as big point producers, but Chinakov coming in, Sillinger making the team, Warrenski leading the way on the back end, Boquist coming in, Bean coming in, adding to some young guys to that D-core. Merzlikins and Korpisalo are good goaltenders when they're healthy, especially Merzlikins is kind of taken over as the starter. I feel like this team has a little bit more potential than people are giving them credit for, but at the same time, in that very, very tough Metropolitan Division, I don't know if they're going to be able to score enough goals, and if the defense is as bad as it was last year, I mean, that is the thing that made the Columbus Blue Jackets the Columbus Blue Jackets, was how good they were defensively, and that was just not the case last season. So if that area continues to struggle, it's going to be another year much like last season for Columbus. I don't know. It's going to be a really interesting year. We'll see how it all works out. They've got some pieces that I really, really like, but I don't know if the whole package is really there with Columbus, and that's something that we're going to be remain to be seen. But that is my preview here for the Columbus Blue Jackets. We'll see how they do this season. Again, like I said, the expectations aren't super high. They had a really rough year last year, but there are some intriguing pieces, particularly young pieces with this team that might make this team a little bit better than people are initially expecting. So we'll have to wait and see how it all works out this year. But like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our merchandise store, memberships, and donations are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys soon.